At its peak, the city of Nineveh was the densest concentration of wealth and logistical power on Earth. Centuries before the rise of the Roman Republic, the Assyrians had already established a model for a centralized, multi-ethnic empire, sustained by a professional bureaucracy and a standing army of unprecedented scale. Queen Shammuramat, known to the Greeks as the mythical Semiramis, was the primary architect of this stability. In a culture that viewed royal women as mere instruments of lineage, she demonstrated that an empire is a machine built from two parts: the rituals that command the mind and the iron that enforces the border. When her husband died in 811 BC, the empire faced immediate disintegration through civil war. Shammuramat took the title of regent, commanding the military personally to secure the frontiers, while simultaneously launching a massive reconstruction of the capital's infrastructure. She was the first ruler to treat governance as a system of integrated engineering, but because this intellect belonged to a woman, her successors spent centuries attempting to bury the evidence of her reign. The trajectory of the ancient world shifted in 806 BC. This was the year her son, Adad-nirari III, reached the traditional age of maturity and expected to take his place as the sole head of the empire. Shammuramat faced a choice: maintain her grip through force or step back. She chose the latter, gradually transferring administrative powers to her son while attempting to guide him as an advisor. She bet on the continuity of her bloodline over the security of her office. The bet failed. Adad-nirari was an insecure ruler, easily manipulated by a military aristocracy that resented Shammuramat's reforms. Following her death, he began the systematic erasure of her name from public monuments, weakening the central administration and setting Assyria on a path towards internal stagnation and eventual collapse. By prioritizing maternal sentiment over the cold requirements of state survival, she allowed the world's most advanced political system to dissolve. The resulting power vacuum in the Near East delayed the development of global civilization by 1,000 years. If we move the focal point of history back to that night in 806 BC, we find a Shammuramat who realizes her son is a liability. Instead of abdicating, she organizes the Bloody Night of Kalhu. She eliminates the traditionalist generals before they can consolidate around her son, effectively ending the old military dynasty in a single evening. To legitimize this coup, she executes a complete constitutional shift. She declares herself the living, direct incarnation of the goddess Ishtar, moving the seat of power from the royal palace to the temple. She understands that a monarch can be overthrown, but a god is a permanent fixture of the universe. By merging her identity with the divine, she transforms the fear of the crown into the worship of the state. Her first move is to monopolize the empire's intellectual capital. She restricts the cult of Nabu, the god of writing, to a state-managed priesthood. Literacy and astronomy are no longer tools for the elite. They are guarded state secrets, used to predict agricultural cycles and maintain a psychological edge over a population that can no longer read the omens for themselves. Next, she applies this focus on engineering to the environment itself. By expanding the Assyrian canal system into a hyper-centralized network, she creates a hydraulic dictatorship. Every drop of water from the Tigris and Euphrates is now managed through a central hub. This creates absolute compliance. Any city-state that considers dissent can be brought to its knees without a single arrow being fired. The queen simply adjusts the sluice gates at the central dam, and the rebellious city's fields turn to dust within a single season. To prevent future family coups, she sidelines her son as a sacred hostage, a symbolic figure with no administrative function. She replaces the landed nobility with a meritocracy of eunuchs, men whose loyalty is guaranteed because they have no families to favor and no lineages to build. By integrating environmental control with a specialized bureaucracy, Shammuramat builds a state that does not rely on the talent of a single king. She has created an immortal, self-optimizing machine. With the Assyrian core stabilized for centuries, the regional power balance never breaks. The Persian Empire, which historically filled the vacuum left by Assyria's fall, is strangled in its crib by a state that never stops expanding. The ripple effects reach Europe. Alexander the Great's ancestors remain shepherds in a client kingdom. and the Roman Republic is reduced to a minor trading outpost, paying tribute to an Assyrian navy that controls the entire Mediterranean. This Pax Assyriaca prevents the cyclical collapses that defined our history. Without the destruction of libraries and the flight of scholars during the Dark Ages, the technical knowledge of metallurgy, hydraulics, and astronomy is allowed to compound uninterrupted for 2,000 years. By the time our era arrives in this timeline, the Assyrian obsession with environmental engineering has evolved into advanced fluid dynamics and genetic optimization. The state remains matriarchal, led by a succession of living goddesses who view scientific research as the ultimate form of divine worship. Because the bridge between the Iron Age and the Space Age was never burned, humanity reaches the stars 2 millennia early. Modern Baghdad is a vertical garden of hydrokinetic towers, and the first Mars colonies are launched from the summits of ancient ziggurats, now repurposed as electromagnetic mass drivers. The ultimate lesson of Shammuramat's reign is that sentiment is the enemy of progress. By choosing to be a mother to a son instead of the architect of a species, she allowed the clock of human evolution to be reset. Our current world is the result of her one moment of mercy.